All right, we've got a nice little podcast. We're coming back after some time off, and we're very fortunate. It's Easter weekend. We brought all the children together, and we're really excited. We're going to have a conversation about blended families, and we've got them here. So we've got Shannon and her boyfriend Ben. Jalen is with Maria. Michelle is here. Rebecca's here. We've got all the kids here. So you guys all say hello.
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 Hi.
Hey, cool. So we've got everyone together, and we're having Easter on a Saturday night at my office in a conference room, and we've had Chipotle, and we've had a couple of adult beverages, but that's going to be fun because what we really want to do is we want the kids to really express themselves and talk about their experience with blended families and how it all works and things that they've experienced. So as we go through this, we're excited, and we hope you will too. Michelle, can you say hello to everyone?
Hi.
And Michelle says hello. And so we're just going to start.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I guess we'll start with some of our experiences. So Donald and I, when we decided to get married, we had zero expectation of our kids becoming friends and getting close and us ever doing holidays together. So
Don't you wish I would have stayed?
no, it's been really
No,
good.
we absolutely decided that we were not going to make any requirements of the
The kids, yeah.
Because- and I hate calling them kids because they're really adults.
Yeah.
You call them the offspring.
And I hate calling them adults.
Because they're not really that
because
either.
they're not really adults either. But they're fun. And
Yeah.
but we truly made the intentional decision that we weren't going to set any expectations for them.
Mm-hmm.
We've talked about that when we've taught on
Step families.
step families, and we really had no expectation, and we were shocked at how they've all come together.
Well, and so we have a story that we like to tell people. We, Jalen was he home for the summer?
Home for the summer.
Okay, and we had arranged to do dinner with him one night, and usually whenever we'd offer one of the kids free food, they would be there in a heartbeat, and he canceled on us. And it was really odd, but we went to church, and then we decided to go out to dinner, and we're both sitting at dinner, and our phones start to blow up with all these text messages, just over and over and over and over and over again, and it's Becca's texting, and Shannon's texting, and Jalen's texting, and it's just our phones are going crazy. And we figured out that the three of them went to dinner. So at first we're kind of offended because Jalen stood us up. And then we figured out that the three of them had been having texting conversations
Steak
and
Steak and shake. That's right.
and conversations and had sort of formed their own relationship without us being a part of it.
We're still having those conversations.
They're still having those conversations. But it was just really a shock to us, and we were absolutely thrilled because we never meant to orchestrate that, but they sort of did it, I guess, organically.
And that's what we really believe, right? Is that was a great thing for them to do on their own, and we didn't have to force it. So now we're fortunate. It's Easter weekend. We're celebrating the resurrection of our Lord Jesus Christ, and now we get to talk to them about what's it like to be part of a blended family. And one thing that we're going to be very clear of, obviously they have mothers and fathers in other relationships. We're not going to talk at all about that. We're going to stay focused on the folks in this room so that we will not stray. And if we start to stray, you and I will pull everyone back in. So I guess what I'll ask is I'll open up and I'll say, hey, what's it like to be part of a blended family? Anybody? Becca, Shannon, Jalen?
I love it.
You love it.
Yeah.
Becca says she's loved it. Why do you love it?
I mean, I think like as a kid, like I never expected that this would be a part of my life, and obviously like things were hard at first. But it's like now I just have so many more people who like love me, and so even though it's like been a lot of new like relationship building and a lot of new, I don't know, just learning how to interact with different people, like I think it's been really good and really helpful to have, I don't know, more family and more of a network and more of a support system. And I feel really grateful for like all of my step siblings. And yeah, I think it was like really cool getting to like hang out with Jalen and Shannon that one day. And like, I don't know, I feel really fortunate to be in the family that we are. And I think that, yeah, I just think it's been awesome and really exciting. And
That's all. I like to ask some follow-up questions, but I want to give the other guys an opportunity to speak. And Ben and Maria, I mean, as you guys can speak to it also, we're welcoming you into it. But Jalen, Shannon, what do you guys think? Because I want to go back to Becca, and that's back with some very specific questions on what she said. Thoughts? Nothing?
You got anything?
I think I love it 50% of the time, and I hate it 50% of the time.
Right. Welcome to Shannon, everyone.
Yeah, I mean, it's like really awesome to have a brother. I never thought I would have a brother, and that's like really cool to me. I mean, Becca's cool and sisters are cool, but girls are mean, and I don't like them very much.
dang, thanks.
Wow.
I don't get along with girls very well. I get along a lot better with guys just because girls are rude, and I don't like that. So it's really cool to have an older brother and an older sister. I still get to be the youngest, which is nice. But I also hate it at times as well because holidays used to be my favorite time of the year, and now I hate holidays because I feel very torn in half, and I don't want to hurt anyone's feelings, but I also don't want to be unhappy. And the holidays that you think of with your mom and your dad and your whole extended family are never going to happen again. And it scares me to have children because I don't know what I'm supposed to tell them. There's no grandma and grandpa, and so yeah, I love it and I hate it.
No, I think that's great. I think that's great and honest. That's one of the reasons that we wanted to get everyone together, is so that they could talk about the pluses and the minuses, because there are negatives.
Yeah.
There are absolute negatives. So, Jalen, do you have any thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, my situation was a little different just because I was an only child. I didn't have any siblings. So, I didn't have any siblings until a few years ago, and it's great. I always wanted siblings, and I love it. Obviously, it's not the siblings I grew up with where we have inside jokes from when we were 5, but no, I love them. It's great. But I also understand what Shannon means because I became a child of a blended family when I was, in high school. So I kind of understood what was going on a little bit. So it was difficult in that sense where it wasn't something I was used to. Some kids, their parents, they grew up with their parents not together. So they were probably used to it. And then I was old enough to understand that this is unfortunate and this is not something I know how to deal with. So it was really hard for a while, but just becoming part of another family is a blessing in itself. Just because, like Becca said, and like Shannon said, having more support system, more people who love on you, more people to show love to, and all that good stuff is just fantastic.
And I love that, and I appreciate you guys, because that's one of the things that Michelle and I really want to do in these podcasts. Is we want to be honest, and holidays obviously are really hard for you guys, and at your ages. So Becca's 23, right? Jalen's 23, right? Is that right?
Yes.
Shannon's 22.
21.
21. So we're past the point of shared custody. Right?
Yes.
Oh, thank
But
God.
no, thank God. but we
I
do
was
have
never at that
holidays,
point.
and Jalen comes in town because he lives out of town. So we have that element also. So I think one of the cool things to ask is, what is it about the holidays that are hard for you guys? And is there anything that you would say to a family listening right now how can they make the holidays easier for you guys? Becca, would you like to start with that?
I think the hardest part for the first few years was that you kind of have to mourn your old traditions
That's good. Mourn your old traditions.
and just kind of get to a point of like acceptance that that's just not going to happen anymore. And I think that as your family changes, the traditions do too. And honestly, sometimes going back to those old things and those old traditions makes it a lot harder for me when it's like trying to like fake or like go back or try to fit something into a mold. And I think that especially in a blended family, it's like, is it going to be hard to transition? Obviously, we all have these things. It's like, this is what makes Christmas Christmas, you know, but I think the most helpful thing for me has been like being willing to like look at, acknowledge that it's sad that those things are gone, mourn for those, work through those, and then be excited for new things and new traditions and getting to be a part with like new family.
I love that. I absolutely love that response, because as a parent, you have to recognize that the child, and I don't like calling you a child, right? So you guys, please understand, I don't like calling you that because you're adults. But for parents to recognize that they do have a mourning process that they're going through. The things that they used to may not happen anymore. And
I don't want them to.
But,
in a lot of ways.
And some things you don't want to, some things you may want to, but you have to allow them that space to say, you know, this is not what I'm used to, and there's an uncomfortableness about it.
Yeah, and you know, kind of interesting because when Donald and I, and we've talked about this before, dated for a ridiculously long time, on and off.
True.
On and off.
On and
Shannon actually threw away flowers I bought.
No, threw away
I
flowers.
sure did.
She smashed glasses on the porch on my behalf. She was amazingly all in there.
I
But
wrote a passive aggressive note on the fridge.
wrote a passive aggressive note on a whiteboard one time. It was anyway. We're
was
digressing, but anyway, I think that
Donald, I don't know if this is making you sound awesome.
you know, Donald and I spent a lot of time working on trying to make sure that we were ready for marriage and that we were preparing to be married well. I don't think that we really figured out how to incorporate our kids in that and what that was going to look like. And I think that, you know, when we got married, we were still mourning holidays. We just didn't celebrate.
Yeah, that's
I mean,
true.
I spent Christmas at home in bed and, you know, Thanksgiving at home in bed. And when my girls weren't with me, I was home in bed. I mean, I spent New Year's at home in bed. I just didn't celebrate. I just decided that holidays were over. And so it's,
I was drinking.
but anyway, as I just want to say that, you know, we kind of came about it on the opposite side. Instead of being really proactive and intentional, we have kind of fallen into it and trying to just create new things. And I mean, we're working really hard to do it, and we're not always doing it well, but I think that we have sort of grown to start to appreciate holidays at the same time that they're learning to adjust to new situations.
So I don't want to get us sidetracked. I want to go to Shannon and then to Jalen and say, okay, what are some of the things that you have found really difficult about being a blended family, especially around holidays? Because, you know, some families work really hard on the day-to-day process, but at your ages, holidays are really the time that it hits you.
Yeah, it is. I feel like I moved in with my grandma, so I didn't pick a parent. I picked a grandparent, and it just so happens my other one lives in Florida, so it doesn't feel like choosing to me. So I made a decision that would put myself at peace and not feeling like I had to choose a side. And so day to day, I could ignore the fact that my parents are divorced, and I live with grandma and grandpa, and that's normal to me, and that's familiar to me, and that's home to me. And then holidays come, and I get a text from mom, and I get a text from dad, and
What are you
sometimes
doing,
the
Shannon?
gatherings are the same time, and sometimes I just don't feel like going to one of them, and sometimes I just don't feel like existing at all on those days because it's very painful. I think that my best advice to anybody who is new at blended families is accept fault. Everybody needs to accept fault. I think that like when you choose to separate and bring other people into your children's life, it is painful for them. And it can feel easy to think, well, I'm just trying to make myself happy, I'm not doing anything wrong, which is true. And yet you chose to have a child with somebody, and once you separate that, you know, the child has no choice. They did nothing wrong, and therefore you need to, I think it's important to make sure that they know it's not their fault. There's nothing that they could have done to stop it, and they don't have to change their life completely just because you chose to change yours. And if changing your life by separating is the best thing for yourself, I think that that's what you should do. But you need to also give your child the freedom to do what is best for themselves.
You know, I love that. I absolutely love that, because what you said in there is two things. One is you've got to give the child the opportunity to say what's best for them. And you've got to give yourself the opportunity to say what's best for you. Now, it takes a lot of communication, takes a lot of work to make those things work.
Yes,
right? Because
sure.
sometimes they're completely different. What's best for you and what's best for your mom, sometimes they're completely different. But there's a work element involved, and there's a respect element involved that we have to make sure that we recognize. So I think that's really important as you look at a blended family, that especially as they get older in age, because your mom and dad divorced when you were 12. So at that point, Shannon had her own thoughts and processes. So you had to own that. You had to respect that. So I think that's really important to families recognize. Jalen, what about you? What about you from your experiences? What's been hard about being part of a blended family?
I think the hardest part at first was, you know, because I was always involved with sports, I was always the athlete, I was always doing other things. So I wasn't used to having to make time, I mean, specifically to see you. I mean, you weren't there anymore. So I wasn't used to not being able just to come home to dinner and being able to talk to you about how practice was or how something like that was. And then...
Right, because what Jalen's talking about is that before he was out of the house, his mom and I had separate houses. So when he would come home from school, he lived with his mom. So the opportunity for us to necessarily bond and talk about things were gone.
And it wasn't, for me, because I was 16, I think, 17, something like that. And it wasn't necessarily picking a parent, it was picking a household where my mom didn't have to move. So I was used to the routine of where I was. I was used to, I knew exactly when I had to leave for school. I knew when I was going to get home, and stuff like that. So it wasn't necessarily about, you know, I wanted to live with my mom over my dad or anything. It was just the routine was easier for me. But it got really difficult when I went off to college. So I didn't go to college somewhere where I could come home every weekend. I went to college 4.5 hours away. So the most difficult thing was then, you know, when I did come home, how do I balance this time evenly? Or how do I make it fair to everyone? And, you know, and now I'm, you know, dating Maria and I live even further away. So now I have 3 families to kind of balance between. And, you know, that's extremely difficult and sometimes exhausting, but it's, you know, it's part of the life, and you learn how to do it. Obviously, I've learned how to do it, but
Maria may not say well, but you've learned how to do it.
Yeah,
He's learned.
we're working on
The
it.
blended family, I think, just kind of helped us also, at least in my feeling, feel more accepted into a family.
And for a kid, a young adult, whatever, child of a blended family, I think it's really important to be very open and honest with your parents and your step family, because there are times when I come home and I'm only going to be home for 3 days, and I'm doing stuff with mom and I'm doing stuff with Maria, and I just don't have time to hang out, so it's important to just be honest. And it's not that, I'm choosing not to, it's not that I want to hurt your feelings, but there's times when I just do not have the time or the energy.
Mm-hmm.
So it's important to be very honest, and it's not an easy thing to do.
It's
So-
not. I think, sorry, to go off
No,
of
go
that, you have to make your child feel comfortable being honest with you, because honesty is important in how you're feeling. But if your kid's afraid, if every time you tell them, sorry, I can't see you, I'm with dad today, and you're like, oh, so you don't want to hang out with me, and you make them feel guilty, then they're just going to lie to you, or they're going to separate from you further. And you have to make it easy for them to be honest.
I love that. I love that. Make it easy for them to be honest, and I think that's really key. Even as if they're 7, 8, 9, and they're going back and forth between houses, you have to make it easy for them to be honest. So, Michelle and I try to keep these to 20 minutes. We're a little bit longer than that right now, but I think this is good stuff. So I'm going to ask Becca, Shannon, and Jalen real quick. Michelle and I don't do it well, right? Let's be very honest. We're not perfect. But what would it take for you, as an advice to a parent listening to this, to make it easy to be honest?
One piece of advice.
One piece of advice. What would it, especially regarding being honest, for a child to be honest to the parent? What would it take for that parent? What kind of environment should that parent create? What should that parent do? How should that parent communicate with you in order for you to be honest with them?
And it doesn't have to be something that we're doing or not doing. Like, I don't want this to be, throw Donald and Michelle under the bus, but just what helps, but what helps you feel like you can be honest with your parents?
I'll say an outside source.
Yeah,
I think.
yeah.
So we got Maria speaking right
Yeah.
now. This is Maria.
I think in almost any family, blended or not, it's just allowing your child the opportunity to speak up and be open to their thoughts. Now, true, there are going to be times where it's feel like judgment or not, but at least give your child the opportunity to open up and say how they feel.
But what does that look like? What does that, be very specific right now. So I'm a parent listening to this, and you just said, all right, give your kid the opportunity to speak up. I'm like, well, I give my kid the opportunity to speak up. Help me with that.
I think if I can
Go
build
for
off
it.
what Maria's saying, is listen and don't
Don't
Don't-
instantly judge.
Right,
Or
don't
give
make-
your commentary.
you don't have to make a response to everything. There's going to
So
be
parents need to be quiet?
sometimes.
Oh.
Sometimes they just need to hear
Alright.
what their
Yeah,
kid is
because
saying.
there were times. When I was still in school and you guys had split, where I
Ben's agreeing.
wouldn't. Yeah, he's nodding over here. But there were times when I was still in school where I would just come home and go to my room because I felt like you guys weren't listening anyway. So what's the point?
So just let your kids speak.
Right, and again, it's if they're 7, 8, 9, or if they're 16, 17, 18, they have thoughts, they have things that they need to express. Now, if they're going to be able to articulate that or not, it depends, but
that's the parent's job, right? That's the parent's job, is to make sure that you give your child the opportunity to articulate
and don't
and
get
then
angry.
to do active listening.
Right, it's
To
not.
make sure you understand what
Exactly.
your child
Like,
is
I
saying.
come from a past where, I'm not saying I was given where I was told to bottle everything up,
Mhm.
but I've had issues where I felt I had to bottle things up, and that caused a lot of more mental issues for me. And I think that's a lot of issues for other kids, is where they bottle things up, and when they bottle things up, that bottle's gonna pop, and
I
it's
like
gonna
that.
be explosive.
I like that. Becca, Shannon, thoughts? Becca looking at Shannon.
We know Shannon has
Shannon's
thoughts.
always got thoughts. So,
one reason I love Shannon. You guys need to know I love Shannon.
Yes.
Loves Becca, too.
I love Rebecca also.
Becca.
We all
God
love
love
Jalen
Becca.
and Maria and Ben and
So,
We love them all.
I guess I'll kind of throw myself under the bus.
What?
I know. Look at me. It's Easter. So,
Is your name Shannon?
I know.
Document
Who
this.
is this? So,
Document this.
I guess when my parents separated, I did not want to accept it at all. And I didn't consider myself to have a family any longer because I was very angry with them for breaking my family apart. And so I didn't want to think about it, and I just didn't think about it. I went out with my friends and I made stupid decisions, and I got into things I shouldn't, and I did anything that I could to distract myself from the fact that my reality was my reality. I would spend as much time away from the house as possible. I basically considered my boyfriend Ben to be my family. I would go to his family functions. They weren't divorced. It wasn't a choice. They accept me. I feel like the Kish family is my family. I love them. They're very accepting, and it didn't feel broken to me. So anyway, I have good stories and bad stories. I didn't make very good decisions, and I think that I know that my parents were not happy with me when they found out that I had been lying to them about some of the decisions I was making. But I did not feel as if they deserved my honesty. Because I felt that them breaking apart my reality and their promise to God and their decision to bring me into their relationship and then breaking it apart on top of me, I didn't feel like they deserved my respect or my honesty or my truth. And so I feel like had I been, I guess, I'm not saying like told I was right, although I do like that. I think like validation is very important, especially with a child. You know, you have to think about who you were when you were your children's age and how you would have reacted or how you did react when your parents separated. How would that have affected you? How did that affect you?
It's not like a right or wrong. It's like an understanding.
Yeah, exactly. You have to feel like, you know, even if you don't agree with your child, I think saying like, I see how you would feel that way, or I understand where you're coming from is super important.
I love that. And one of the reasons that I will say that I always love, you're shaking your head at me. Today, I always love Shannon. Is that Shannon is honest and almost
Brutally.
brutally and people
She said it first.
People will say honest to a fault. And I mean, you really have to dive down into what she said is that her parents didn't deserve her honesty. And that's a mature statement to say that, you know what, and it's funny because my brother and I, we always took the approach, and people would complain about it with our family. You know, you don't treat your grandmother with respect. Why should we? She's just older than we are. She hasn't done anything. And that's what Shannon is saying. Shannon is saying that, you know what, you need to earn my honesty. You need to earn my respect. And as a parent, we tend not to think that we need to earn that from our kids. And I think that's really important. We do. We need to work really hard at understanding that our kids have the decision to make to be honest or not honest. Michelle is stepping to the table.
She's getting stressed over
Let it.
Okay,
Her
so I
mind is
think
gone.
above all else,
Then it's your turn.
Shannon feels like it's important that a parent validates a kid's feelings? Yes.
I think that it's a yes, but
All
I
right,
also
let's not get in a debate here.
Yeah,
We're-
no, it's not a debate. I just want to make it very clear that I feel like yes, validation is very important, and that is a big part of my point. But another part of my point is that divorce is, I mean, there's a lot of different reasons for divorce. There's abuse, there's just you grow apart from each other. There's a lot of different things that can lead you to a divorce, and you have the right to make that decision. However, you have to accept the consequences of your decisions, and it's not the child's decision.
Absolutely.
And you completely change their entire life forever. It's not like when you grow out of the house, it changes their family growing. Everything is officially different for them, and they had no say over it and no
Yeah.
control over it, and they can't stop it.
Absolutely.
Brings back to the whole thing of letting your kid being open, letting
Exactly.
them express what they need without trying to fix it.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly.
So, Becca, what do you think? What's your advice?
So my problem was never feeling not heard. I think I was pretty open about how I felt, and I didn't feel like I had to hide that, or like I couldn't talk about it. I think my problem was more that like I took on responsibility, and whether that had been something that was communicated to me or something I just kind of adopted, but I decided for a long time that everyone else's feelings were my responsibility. And so could I express myself? Yeah, I knew I could safely do that. But I also felt like it was my responsibility to keep the peace. And so if doing that meant that Mom or Shannon was going to be sad, you know, then I wouldn't. And so it's not that I felt like I couldn't talk or that I couldn't express what I was saying. But I think that, I don't know, if I was going to give a piece of advice, mine would be communicate between one another, like parent to child, child to parent, like what I am feeling and what is happening is not on you. And that's not just like the initial, like, oh, the divorce isn't your fault. Like, I never thought that. But I did feel like when everybody was super emotional afterward, it was like if someone had a tantrum, it was my responsibility to fix it or my fault that it was happening because I said something.
That's interesting because I think that is also partially the difference between an older child and an only child was because I took the complete opposite approach, where I'm not dealing with your emotions. I don't care how you feel. Screw how you feel. I'm isolating myself. And I was blessed with the opportunity. I was an athlete. I was always doing other things, so I didn't have to be home all the time. I was at other events, practices, training, whatever. But I mean, there were times where I would come home and you guys were discussing who knows what, and I wouldn't even say hi. I would go straight upstairs and go to bed. I'm like, I'm not dealing with this. So I guess I was the complete opposite when that. But I think both ends of the spectrum again goes back to understanding the emotions and kind of validating the emotions and understanding, well, why isn't he saying anything, or why is she always trying to fix everything?
I think that's key. I think that as parents that are going through this process of blending a family, you really have to lock into each individual child and the needs and wants of that child, and you have to figure out how to make that child comfortable in that environment. Michelle, we're at 35 minutes. We generally don't go this long,
Yeah.
but I think this is great dialogue.
It is. Real quick, though, I just want to...
I want you to kind of
Wrap
conclude
it up.
this.
Yeah. So, you know, we were in a unique situation with all of our kids that they were all at a coming of age moment. And, you know, anytime your kids are sort of at a coming to age moment, you're learning who they are as adults, and it's not who they were as kids. And so we combined all of these huge changes into one moment in time. And I think that, you know, regardless of we did things well, we did things not well, I think it's about learning how to extend grace to, your parents, to your kids, to each other, and learning how to do better. If we had it to do over again, I'm sure we'd make changes. But we are just so blessed and so grateful that you all are here, that you enjoy being together, and we kind of look forward to what happens in the future.
Yeah, let's be very honest. So this is Easter weekend. It's Saturday night. We are sitting in a conference room in our office. We've got significant others here. We've had Chipotle. Jalen, if you heard it, just open.
Can you tell which child that was?
Just open an adult beverage. So we are trying to say, hey, you know what? We're adults. Let's get together. Let's spend time together as adults, and let's really figure out how these relationships all work. We've invited as many people in as we can. Michelle and I do not do things perfectly. That's not what this podcast is about. What we're trying to do is we're trying to let you, the listeners, hear from our children and say, hey, here's some things that are very important to us. And as we go through that process, we will continue to say, you know what, we will get better, and we will love, and we will enjoy the kids. And that's kind of the way we operate. We hope that you've enjoyed this. This has been really good. From our perspective, we've learned from it. So we just hope that you've got something out of it. So until next time, Her Thoughts, His Thoughts, herthoughtshisthoughts.com. Go schedule a meeting. Michelle's available for counseling, one-on-one discussions. I'm available for one-on-one discussions. If you're a blended family and you really want to talk about this, let us know. We would love to talk about this with you.
Shannon's available to talk to kids.
Oh my gosh, look at Shannon. Shannon's stepping up.
Shannon's trying to get in that
Shannon
side.
will talk to kids.
Significant others, I guess Maria.
Maria says, hey, I'll talk to...
If you have listeners in Maryland.
So what we're trying to do is we're just trying to help the group as a whole. So we're out. Been a great Easter. Happy Easter. Enjoy the fact that our Lord rose from the dead, and that's what makes our religion different from everyone else's. Take care, and goodbye.